They say detectives make the worst victims. We spend our lives untangling other people's lies, following evidence trails and trusting our instincts. But somehow, I missed the clues in my own home. 15 years of marriage, and I never once checked our joint accounts. They teach you about financial security at the academy, but they don't teach you how to spot when your husband is planning his escape. My name is Dia Matthews. I'm a detective with the Westlake Police Department, and this is the story of how I lost everything and found something I wasn't meant to see. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs. The late nights at the IE office, the sudden interest in privacy, the way Tony would change the subject whenever I mentioned our retirement plans. But you never want to believe the person sleeping beside you is capable of betrayal. Not until the evidence is staring you, right in the face. It was a Tuesday morning when my world collapsed. I remember it clearly because I'd just closed a difficult case. 3 months of work finally wrapped up with an arrest. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I came home to an empty house, an empty bank account, and a single text message. I'm sorry. I need a different life. 15 years of marriage erased with 12 words. But Tony didn't know who he was dealing with. He didn't realize that the skills that made me one of the department's best detectives would be the same skills that would uncover his trail. He didn't expect me to find the offshore account. And he certainly never intended for me to see the message hidden there, the message that changed everything. I've spent my career believing that evidence doesn't lie, even when people do. This is the story of how I followed the money, uncovered the truth, and discovered that sometimes betrayal is just the beginning of a much larger deception. Let me tell you about my life before the betrayal. I always wanted to be a detective. Even as a little girl growing up in Westlake, I was the one solving neighborhood mysteries. Who stole Mrs. Patterson's garden gnomes? Why the Hamiltons' dog kept escaping? Where the missing bicycles were disappearing? 2. My father would ruffle my hair and call me his little Sherlock. My mother worried it wasn't a proper career path for a young lady, but she supported me anyway. The police academy was tough, tougher for women, always, but I graduated top of my class. That's where I met Shauna and Claudette, who became not just my fellow officers but my closest friends. We were a trio of determination, working our way through the ranks together, supporting each other through the challenges of being women in a male-dominated field. And that's also where I met Tony Blackwood. He wasn't an officer. He worked in the district attorney's office as a paralegal, with ambitions of becoming a lawyer himself someday. Our paths crossed during a case presentation. He had this confidence that filled the room, a sharp mind that could recall the smallest details, and a smile that made me forget my professional composure for just a moment. "Officer Matthews," he said, extending his hand after the presentation. "That was impressive work on the Carson case. Your attention to detail is remarkable." I remember feeling a flutter of pride and something else. "Just doing my job," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Well, your job just made mine a lot easier," he said. "Let me buy you a coffee sometime. I'd love to hear more about your investigative approach." Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends together. Weekends turned into moving in together. And eventually, a small wedding with our closest friends and family in attendance. My father, who'd passed away 2 years before, wasn't there to walk me down the aisle, but I wore his watch tucked into my bouquet. "He'd be proud," my mother whispered before the ceremony. Tony and I built what I thought was a good life. We bought a modest house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. When I made detective after 5 years on the force, he threw me a surprise party. When he finally passed the bar exam on his 3rd attempt, I took him to his favorite restaurant and presented him with a vintage fountain pen that had belonged to my grandfather. "To new beginnings," I toasted. "To us," he replied, clinking his glass against mine. The perfect team. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Whose is? But it was solid. At least that's what I told myself. We both worked long hours. Sometimes days would pass where we barely saw each other, except to kiss goodbye in the morning or crawl into bed at night. But I never doubted that we were building something together, working toward the same goals. We didn't have children. A mutual decision based on our careers and a shared hesitation about bringing kids into a world we both knew could be dangerous and unpredictable. Instead, we focused on our work and our future. We saved diligently, making plans for early retirement, maybe a small vacation home on the coast. Somewhere we can watch the sunset every evening, Tony would say. As a detective, my days were filled with other people's crises and secrets. Domestic disputes that turned violent, corporate fraud that ruined lives, missing persons who sometimes didn't want to be found. I became adept at reading people, at spotting inconsistencies in their stories, at finding the thread of truth beneath layers of deception. You're like a human lie detector, Shauna once told me over drinks after a particularly difficult interrogation. I laughed. Only with suspects. Tony says I'm completely gullible at home. It was true. I'd caught murderers who'd eluded other detectives for years, but I couldn't tell when my husband was lying about where he'd been for dinner. I trusted him completely, the way you're supposed to trust your partner, the way I'd been taught to. Trust family. We were comfortable financially, not wealthy, but secure. Tony's career as a lawyer was finally taking off after years of struggling to find his footing in a competitive field. My detective's salary was steady, with good benefits, and a pension plan. We maintained a joint account for household expenses and savings, plus separate accounts for personal spending. So I don't have to see how much you spend on shoes, Tony would joke, though I rarely indulged in such purchases. Our shared account was where we deposited the bulk of our earnings, mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, and most importantly, our retirement savings. 15 years of careful planning, of skipping vacations, of buying used cars instead of new ones, of putting away every bonus and tax refund. Nearly $400,000. Our future security. I never checked the statements. Tony managed our finances. He was better with numbers, more disciplined about budgeting. You catch the bad guys, I'll handle the money, he'd say. It was our arrangement, and it worked. Until it didn't. The morning everything changed, I'd been up since 4 a.m., finishing paperwork on the Donovan trafficking case. 3 months of surveillance, witness interviews, and evidence gathering had finally paid off with an arrest that would stick. I called Tony at 7 a.m. to share the good news, but the call went straight to voicemail. Not unusual. He was probably in the shower or driving. I stopped for coffee on the way home, picked up pastries from the bakery Tony loved as a small celebration. The house was quiet when I arrived, which struck me as odd. Tony's car wasn't in the driveway, but he should have been home getting ready for work. I called out his name. No answer. I checked our bedroom. His closet door was open, several empty hangers where his suits should have been. His toiletries were missing from the bathroom. A cold feeling settled in my stomach, that detective's instinct that something was very wrong. I called him again. Straight to voicemail. I called his office. Mr. Blackwood called in yesterday to say he'd be taking personal leave, his assistant told me, sounding confused. I assumed you knew. That's when I checked our joint account online. Balance, $212.47 or $400,000. Gone. I stared at the screen, refreshing the page multiple times as if the numbers might magically change. But the balance remained the same, $212.47. Not even enough to cover our upcoming mortgage payment. I sat down hard on the kitchen stool, my celebration pastries forgotten on the counter. This had to be a mistake, a bank error, a glitch in the system. But even as I tried to rationalize it, my detective's instincts were screaming. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's when my phone chimed with a text message. I'm sorry. I need a different life. 12 words. 15 years of marriage, and that's all I deserved? My hands shook as I tried to call him. Straight to voicemail again. I called his office again, his friends, even his brother Edgar in Colorado. Nobody had seen him. Nobody knew anything. Or at least that's what they claimed. I returned to our bedroom, this time with my detective's eye. The closet wasn't just missing a few suits. All his favorite clothes were gone. The expensive watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. The leather weekend bag he loved. His passport wasn't in the drawer where we kept our important documents. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. I called Shauna, my voice barely steady. He's gone. Tony's gone, and he took all our money. She arrived 20 minutes later. Still, in her uniform. One look at my face and she wrapped me in a hug. We'll figure this out, she said. That's what we do, right? We solve problems. I nodded, wiping my eyes. I need to report the theft. Are you sure it's theft? She asked carefully. Joint accounts are complicated. Legally speaking, he had access. $400,000, Shauna. Our entire savings. He didn't just take his half. She nodded grimly. Then we treat it like any other case. Evidence, witnesses, timeline. When did you last see him? I thought back. Yesterday morning. He kissed me goodbye like any other day. Said he had meetings all day and might be late. A bitter laugh escaped me. I guess he meant really late. And the money? When was it last all there? I hesitated, shame washing over me. I don't know. I haven't checked the account in months. Tony handled all that. How could I have been so careless, so trusting? I, who questioned everyone's motives for a living? Shauna didn't judge me. She just nodded. First step, call the bank. Put a freeze on the account. Then we need to check credit cards, other accounts, see if there's a pattern. For the next few hours, that's what we did. Called the bank, filed a report, began documenting everything. The bank representative was sympathetic, but not particularly helpful. The withdrawals were authorized, Mrs. Blackwood. There were multiple transactions over the past 3 weeks, all using the correct credentials and security protocols. But I didn't authorize them. Your husband did, and it's a joint account. 3 weeks. He'd been methodically draining our account for 3 weeks, and I hadn't noticed. Each withdrawal, just under the amount that would trigger a special notification, he knew exactly what he was doing. Can you tell me where the money went? Most. Transfers were to an account at First Maritime Bank. I frowned. We didn't have an account there. By evening, the initial shock had hardened into something else. Determination. This wasn't just about a husband leaving his wife. This was theft, betrayal on multiple levels. And if there's one thing I knew how to do, it was track people who didn't want to be found. I need to go to the station, I told Shauna. Use the databases. Look for travel records, credit card activity. She hesitated. Daya, you're too close to this. You should let someone else. Would you? I challenged. If it were your husband? She sighed. No, but I'm coming with you. At the station, Lieutenant Reeves was understanding but firm. Matthews, I can't officially assign resources to this. It's a domestic situation until proven otherwise. He stole $400,000 from a joint account he legally had access to. I'm sorry, but the department can't get involved unless there's clear evidence of criminal activity. I swallowed my frustration. I understand. I'm just going to use the databases for personal research, on my own time. He gave me a long look. Don't compromise any official investigations. And Matthews? His voice softened. Take care of yourself. Divorce is hard enough without complications. It wasn't divorce, it was theft, abandonment, betrayal. But I just nodded. With Shauna's help, I began piecing together Tony's movements over the past month. Credit card receipts showed lunch meetings at expensive restaurants I'd never heard him mention. A charge at a jewelry store 3 weeks ago. Certainly not for anything he'd given me. A hotel downtown last Friday when he'd told me he was working. Late. Classic signs of an affair, Shauna murmured, looking over my shoulder. The thought had occurred to me, but hearing it said aloud made my stomach clench. An affair was one thing. People made mistakes. Relationships were complicated. But to clean out our life savings? To vanish without a word? That went beyond an affair. I need to find out who she is, I said. Why? Does it matter? It might help me find him. And my money. By midnight, we had a name. Sheila Moreno. A paralegal at Tony's firm, 27 years old, 13 years younger than me. Her social media showed a woman with expensive tastes. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, champagne brunches. Her last post was from 2 days ago. A close-up of a champagne glass against a backdrop that looked like an airport lounge. The caption read, "New adventures await. Blessed." I stared at her perfect manicure, her flawless makeup, the diamond tennis bracelet just visible on her wrist. Was this what Tony wanted? Someone young and flashy? Someone who hadn't spent 15 years building a life with him? The bracelet, I said suddenly. That's new and looks expensive. Shauna zoomed in on the image. Very. At least 5,000, probably more. The jewelry store charge on Tony's credit card was for $4,800. We looked at each other. Another piece of evidence falling into place. I searched for her name in the travel database. A flight to Grand Cayman 2 days ago. One-way ticket. Then I checked Tony's name. Same flight, same day. The Cayman Islands, Shauna said quietly. Known for banking privacy, tax havens, offshore accounts. I finished her sentence. Of course. Tony hadn't just taken the money and run. He'd planned an escape. The Cayman Islands had no extradition treaty with the United States for financial crimes. If the money was there, it would be nearly impossible to recover through legal channels. I leaned back in my chair, fatigue and despair washing over me. He's really gone. With her. With everything. Shauna put her hand on my shoulder. Not everything. You still have your house, your career, your friends. She paused. And you have your skills. If anyone can figure this out, it's you. I nodded, but my mind was spinning. What was I supposed to do now? Fly to Grand Cayman? Confront them? The money was legally transferred even if morally it was theft. I had no jurisdiction there, no legal standing. I need to know more about her, I said finally. About their relationship. When it started. How long he's been planning this. We can talk to people at his firm tomorrow, Shauna suggested. Someone must have noticed something. I nodded, gathering the printouts we'd collected. As I was about to log out of the system, a thought occurred to me. I typed in another search, this time for First Maritime Bank. The results made me sit up straighter. First Maritime wasn't just any bank. It specialized in setting up offshore accounts, shell companies, and complex financial structures, mostly legal, but favored by those looking to hide assets, and they had a branch office right here in Westlake. I need to visit First Maritime tomorrow, I said. Maybe they can tell me something about where exactly the money went. Shauna looked skeptical. Banking privacy laws are pretty strict. They're not going to tell you anything. Maybe not officially, I agreed, but banks have people, and people can be persuaded to talk. 15 years as a detective had taught me that everyone talks eventually. You just need to find the right approach. As I drove home to my empty house, my mind kept returning to Tony's text message. I need a different life. What had been so wrong with our life together that he needed to steal and flee? What hadn't I seen? The questions burned, but beneath them was a growing resolve. I would find answers. I would find him, and I would get back what was mine. I barely slept that night. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Tony and Sheila laughing, together on a white sand beach, spending my money, building their new life while mine lay in ruins. By dawn, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee, making lists, organizing what I knew and what I still needed to find out. First Maritime Bank opened at 9 a.m. I was there at 8:30, watching employees arrive, studying the layout, looking for someone who might be helpful. Years as a detective had taught me that mid-level employees were often your best sources, high enough to have access to information, not so high that they were fanatical about following every protocol. At 9:05, I walked in and approached the receptionist with my most professional smile. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with someone about international transfers, please." I was directed to a young man named John Miller, a financial advisor with a friendly face and eager-to-please demeanor. "Perfect. I understand your bank specializes in offshore accounts," I began after introducing myself. John's smile remained fixed, but his eyes flickered with caution. "We offer a variety of international banking services to meet our clients' needs." I leaned forward slightly. "My husband recently transferred a substantial amount of money from our joint account to your bank. I believe it may have been forwarded to an offshore account." "I see." His caution increased visibly. "Well, I'm afraid I can't discuss specific client transactions without proper authorization. Banking privacy laws." "Of course," I smiled reassuringly. "I completely understand the privacy concerns. I'm not asking for specific account details. I'm simply trying to understand the process. If someone wanted to move money offshore quickly, what's the standard procedure?" He relaxed slightly. "Well, typically funds would be transferred to a domestic account with us first, then moved to one of our international partner institutions. The client would need to complete several forms, provide identification." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. As he explained the general process, I kept the conversation casual, professional. No hint of the desperation I felt. "And these partner institutions, they would be in places like the Cayman Islands, among others. We have relationships with banks in various financial centers: Cayman, Bahamas, Switzerland, Singapore." "I see. And once the money is there, it's quite secure, isn't it? Protected by local privacy laws?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Our clients value financial privacy for various legitimate reasons, Detective Matthews." I maintained my smile. "Of course, perfectly legitimate." I paused, then decided to take a risk. "My husband, Tony Blackwood, seemed very pleased with your services." John's expression remained neutral, but I caught the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Tony had been here, in person. This wasn't just wire transfers done online." "I can't confirm or deny any client relationships, I'm afraid." "Naturally." I pulled out my business card, writing my personal cell number on the back. "If you happen to think of anything that might help me understand the situation better, I'd appreciate a call. Completely confidential, of course." He took the card reluctantly. "I'm not sure I can be of any further assistance." "Just one more question. If someone did want to access information about an offshore account they should have access to but don't have the details for, is there a process for that?" He hesitated. "There are procedures for legitimate account holders to recover access. Yes, it would typically require proper identification, possibly a court order if there's a dispute." I thanked him and left, knowing I hadn't gotten much concrete information, but I'd planted a seed. Sometimes that was all you needed. Someone thinking about your situation, maybe feeling a pang of sympathy, maybe noticing something that didn't seem right. My next stop was Tony's law firm, Wallace and Peterson. I'd been there many times before for office parties, to drop things off for Tony, to meet him for lunch. Today, I entered as a detective, not a wife. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Daya, how are you? Tony's not in today. He's taking some personal time. I know, I said calmly. I'm actually hoping to speak with someone in HR. It's important. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Marjorie Wells, the firm's HR director, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd always been friendly to me at office functions. Daya, this is unusual, she said after I explained the situation. I'm not sure how much I can tell you about Tony's employment details without his consent. I understand the confidentiality concerns, I said. I'm not asking for his personnel file, but my husband has disappeared with our life savings, and I'm trying to understand what happened. Anything you can tell me about his recent behavior, his relationship with Sheila Moreno? At the mention of Sheila's name, Marjorie's expression shifted. Disapproval. Interesting. That situation has been problematic, she admitted. Office relationships happen, of course, but this one became disruptive. How long had it been going on? She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. The firm became aware of it about 6 months ago. We had to speak to both of them about appropriate workplace conduct. 6 months. While I was working late cases, while I thought Tony was building his career, he was starting a new relationship. The timeline was coming into focus. Did Tony's work performance change recently? Marjorie sighed. Between us? Yes. He's been distracted, missing deadlines, rescheduling client meetings. The partners were becoming concerned. She paused. And there was the Morgan Trust account incident. What incident? I probably shouldn't. She stopped herself. Actually, given the circumstances, you should know. There was a discrepancy in one of the client trust accounts Tony managed. A substantial amount was temporarily misplaced. Tony claimed it was a clerical error, and the money was returned within 48 hours, so the partners decided not to escalate it. My detective instincts flared. When was this? About 2 months ago. And Sheila? What was her role at the firm exactly? Paralegal, primarily supporting the estate planning department. She had access to sensitive financial information for many high-net-worth clients. The picture was becoming clearer. Tony, with his legal background and position of trust, and Sheila, with her access to financial information about wealthy clients, both working at a firm that handled millions in trust accounts and estate planning. It was the perfect environment for learning how to move money discreetly. Has Sheila come to work this week? Marjorie shook her head. She submitted her resignation by email on Monday. 2 weeks' notice, but she's using vacation days, effective immediately. Just as I thought. They'd coordinated their departures. One more question, I said. Did Tony handle any clients with offshore accounts or international holdings? Marjorie's eyebrows raised slightly. Yes, actually. He was recently assigned to the Harrington estate. Old money, very complex international holdings. He was quite pleased about getting the assignment. It was a vote of confidence from the partners. I thanked Marjorie for her time, leaving her. My card as I had with John at the bank. Another seed planted. By early afternoon, I was back at the police station, requesting a few days of personal leave. Lieutenant Reeves didn't ask for details, just nodded sympathetically. Take what you need, Matthews. The cases will be here when you get back. Shauna and Claudette met me for a late lunch, both in uniform but on their break. I updated them on what I'd learned. So they've been planning this for months, Claudette said, shaking her head. And using his position at the firm to learn how to hide money offshore. Classic white-collar methodology, Shauna agreed. But what's your next move? You can't just fly to Grand Cayman and confront them? Actually, that's exactly what I'm considering, I admitted. But first, I need to gather more information about exactly where the money went. Even if you find them, even if you find the account, what can you actually do? Claudette asked gently. Legally speaking, joint accounts are tricky. He had authorization. True. But taking everything crosses a line into financial abuse and potentially criminal fraud, I countered. especially if I can prove he was planning this for months, deliberately deceiving me. And there's the question of the Morgan Trust account at his firm. If he was testing his methods with client funds before taking our money, Shauna leaned forward. That would be a criminal matter. The firm might want to keep it quiet, but it's still theft. I nodded. Exactly. I need leverage. Something that would make him want to return my share of the money to avoid worse consequences. Be careful, Daya, Claudette warned. You're talking about confronting a man who's already proven he's dishonest and willing to hurt you. And you'd be doing it in a foreign country where you have no official standing. She was right, of course. The rational part of me knew this. But another part, the part that had lain next to this man for 15 years, that had built a life with him, that had trusted him completely, needed answers that went beyond the money. I need to know why, I said quietly. Not just for closure, but to make sure I never miss signs like this again. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is John from First Maritime. Can we meet somewhere private? I may have information. I looked up at my friends, a surge of adrenaline pushing through my exhaustion. I think I just got my first real lead. I met John from First Maritime at a coffee shop across town, far from both the bank and the police station. He was nervous, constantly scanning the room, his coffee untouched. I could lose my job for this, he said without preamble. I understand the risk you're taking, I assured him. Whatever you tell me stays between us. He nodded, then slid a folded piece of paper across the table. Your husband opened an account with us 3 months ago. The money was transferred to United Cayman Bank 2 days ago. That's the account number. I stared at the string of numbers and letters, my heart racing. How did you get this? I processed the transfer paperwork. I remembered it because of the amount. He hesitated. And because he wasn't alone. Sheila Moreno, I said. John nodded. She seemed to be the one driving the decisions, actually. Very specific about how the transfers should be structured, the timing, everything. That surprised me. I'd been thinking of Sheila as Tony's accomplice, not the mastermind. Was the account opened in both their names? John shook his head. Just his. But there was something odd. He lowered his voice. He set up a digital access system with a secondary password. Said it was for emergency access. I've seen couples do this before. A way for spouses to access funds if something happens. To the primary account holder. I frowned. But the secondary access wasn't for me. No. It was set up for a S. Moreno. He met my eyes. Detective Matthews, there's something else. The way they structured this. Multiple transfers just under reporting thresholds, the specific offshore destination. It follows patterns we're trained to flag for potential money laundering. Did you flag it? He looked down. I should have, but the documentation was all in order, and he's a lawyer with a good reputation. I convinced myself it was just standard asset protection. He took a deep breath. But after you came in, I pulled by the transaction records. There were test transfers before the main ones. Small amounts sent and retrieved. Classic pattern for someone making sure their system works before moving large sums. When did these test transfers happen? Starting about 3 months ago. Small amounts at first, increasing gradually. The same timeline as the clerical error with the Morgan Trust account at Tony's firm. This wasn't just about our money. Tony might have been practicing with client funds. Thank you, John. This is incredibly helpful. There's one more thing. He slid another paper across the table. This is the IP address that accessed the account online yesterday, from Grand Cayman. I carefully folded both papers and tucked them into my pocket. Why are you helping me? He was quiet for a moment. My mother lost everything when my father left. He did something similar. Not as sophisticated, but the same idea. She never recovered, financially or emotionally. He finally met my eyes. I can't undo that, but maybe I can help you avoid the same fate. Back at home, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the account number. Having it was one thing, accessing it was another challenge entirely. I wasn't a hacker, and trying to break into the account remotely would likely trigger security measures. I needed to be smarter. Thinking like a detective, not a desperate ex-wife, I called Claudette, who had a contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division from a previous case. I can't promise anything, she cautioned, but I'll see if he can tell us anything about United Cayman Bank's systems. Maybe there's a legal angle we haven't considered. My next call was to my mother. I hadn't told her about Tony yet, too ashamed of being so completely deceived. But I needed her now. Mom, I have to go away for a few days. Something's happened with Tony. Her silence told me she'd already sensed something was wrong. Mothers always know. What do you need, sweetheart? Can you check on the house while I'm gone? Water the plants? Collect the mail? Of course. She paused. Are you in trouble, Daya? No, I said, then reconsidered. Maybe. It's complicated. Is it something you can tell me about? I took a deep breath. Tony's gone. He took our savings. Her sharp intake of breath was followed by a string of colorful curses that would have shocked anyone who only knew her as a mild-mannered library assistant. All of it? Almost. $400,000. That son of a… She cut herself. Off. What are you going to do? Find him. Get back what's mine. Do you need money for your trip? I have some savings. No, Mom. I have my separate account he couldn't access. About 20,000. It's enough. Be careful, Daya. Men who steal are dangerous in ways you don't always see coming. I knew she was thinking of my father, who had never stolen money, but had taken something equally precious. Her trust, her years, her belief in love. She had rebuilt her life after him, raised me alone, became stronger than she'd ever been with him. If she could do it, so could I. But first, I wanted my money back. I booked a flight to Grand Cayman for the next morning, then packed a small suitcase. As a detective, I'd learned to travel light, to be prepared for changing circumstances. I included one nice outfit. Grand Cayman had upscale restaurants and hotels where Tony and Sheila might be staying. Shauna and Claudette came over that evening, bringing food and practical support. I spoke to my FBI contact, Claudette said as we ate takeout at my kitchen table. He couldn't officially help, but off the record, he said United Cayman has a reputation for working with authorities when actual criminal activity is involved. They protect their clients from tax authorities, but they don't want to be associated with serious crimes. That could be useful, I mused. If I can connect Tony's actions to the issue with the Morgan Trust account at his firm. I also did some digging on Sheila Moreno, Shauna added, sliding a folder across the table. She's not who she appears to be. I opened the folder to find printouts of official records and social media screenshots. What am I looking at? Sheila Moreno only exists on paper going back 3 years. Before that, there was a Sheila Rodriguez, with a remarkably similar birthday and physical description, who disappeared from all records after being investigated for financial fraud at her previous employer in Miami. Charges were dropped, but the pattern matches. I stared at the 2 driver's license photos side by side. Same woman, different hair, slightly different makeup style, but unmistakably the same person. She's done this before, I whispered. She finds men with access to money, convinces them to steal it then. Then what? Claudette asked. I looked up at my friends. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. That night, as I finished packing, I found myself standing in our bedroom, my bedroom now, looking at the photographs on the dresser. Tony and me on vacation in Mexico, at my police academy graduation, at his law school graduation. Smiling, happy, connected. Had it all been a lie? 15 years of what I thought was love and partnership. Had he been waiting for the right moment, the right accomplice, to take everything and run? I placed the photos face down in a drawer. I couldn't. Look at them now. Maybe not ever again. My phone buzzed with a text from Shauna. Just confirmed S. Moreno booked at Royal Palms Resort in Grand Cayman. Room reserved for 7 nights starting yesterday. Registered as Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. He'd taken my money and given my name to his mistress. Something hardened in me then. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about justice. Grand Cayman greeted me with blinding sunshine and humid air that immediately clung to my skin. Such a beautiful place for such an ugly mission. I'd never been to the Caymans before. Tony and I had talked about it. One of those someday vacations we'd take when we had more time, more money, fewer responsibilities. Now he was here with someone else, spending the money we'd saved together. The Royal Palms Resort was exactly the kind of place Tony had always claimed. Was unnecessarily extravagant. 5 stars, oceanfront, with private cabanas and personal butlers. The kind of place that charged $30 for a breakfast mimosa. Apparently his principals had a price tag. I checked into a more modest hotel nearby, unpacked my minimal belongings, and planned my approach. Confronting them directly seemed unwise. They'd just deny everything, maybe even flee to another location. I needed to be strategic. My first stop was United Cayman Bank, a gleaming white building in the heart of George. Town's financial district. I had no official standing here, no badge to flash, no jurisdiction, just my wits and determination. The bank's interior was all marble and mahogany, designed to convey stability and discretion. I approached the receptionist with my most professional smile. "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with someone about accessing an account, please." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from a polished banker named Marcus, explaining my situation with carefully selected details. "My husband and I have a joint account here, but I seem to have misplaced the access information. I was hoping you could help me verify my identity and recover access." Marcus maintained a neutral expression. "Do you have the account number, Mrs. Blackwood?" Dia Blackwood. The name felt strange on my tongue now. "And yes, I have the account number." I showed him the paper John had given me. Marcus typed it into his system, his expression unchanging. "I see. This account was opened quite recently." "Yes, we're diversifying our investments." He nodded. "Unfortunately, this account is not listed as a joint account, Mrs. Blackwood. It's in the name of Tony Blackwood only." I feigned surprise. "That must be a mistake. We've always maintained joint accounts for our major investments." "I understand, but our records are quite clear." His tone was apologetic but firm. "Without proper authorization from the account holder, I'm afraid I cannot provide access or information." I had anticipated this response, but hearing it still stung. Tony had deliberately excluded me, making sure I couldn't access what he'd stolen. "I see. Well, my husband is actually here on the island. I'll speak with him and come back together." Marcus nodded, clearly relieved to have an easy resolution. "That would be best." As I stood to leave, I decided to take a chance. "Just to confirm, the secondary authorization process wouldn't apply in this case?" Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. "Secondary authorization?" "Yes. My husband mentioned setting up emergency access protocol. In case either of us needed to access the account in special circumstances." Marcus hesitated, then checked his computer again. "There is a notation about secondary access, but it's not registered to your name, Mrs. Blackwood." That confirmed what John had told me. Tony had set up secondary access for Sheila, not for me. I thanked Marcus and left, my mind racing. Direct access to the account seemed impossible without Tony's cooperation. I needed another approach. From the bank, I headed to the Royal Palms Resort. I couldn't risk checking if they were in their room, but I could explore the property, perhaps catch sight of them by the pool or restaurant. The resort was spectacular. Lush tropical gardens, infinity pools overlooking the Caribbean, staff carrying trays of colorful drinks to lounging guests. I found a seat at the outdoor bar with a good view of the main pool area, ordered a sparkling water, and settled in to watch. An hour passed, then another. No sign of Tony or Sheila. I was considering moving to another location when my phone buzzed, with a text from Claudette. Found something. S. Moreno previously linked to 2 other cases of missing funds, both involving male partners who later claimed they were manipulated. One was found dead in Mexico, ruled suicide. Call when you can. A chill ran through me despite the tropical heat. What had Tony gotten himself into? And was he a willing participant? Or was he being manipulated by someone who had done this before? I was about to call Claudette when I saw them. Tony and Sheila, emerging from a beachfront cabana, hand in hand. She wore a tiny white bikini that showcased her perfect figure, oversized sunglasses, and a wide-brimmed hat. Tony looked different. Designer sunglasses I'd never seen before. Expensive-looking swim trunks. His body more tanned than I'd seen it in years. They looked like they belonged here, among the wealthy and carefree. Like they'd never worked a day in their lives. Like they hadn't destroyed someone else's life to create this illusion. My first instinct was to confront them right there, to storm across the pool deck and demand answers. But the detective in me held back. Confrontation wouldn't get me my money. Strategy would. I snapped a few discreet photos with my phone, then slipped away before they could notice me. Back in my hotel room, I called Claudette. Tell me everything about the other cases. She filled me in on what she'd found. Sheila, or whatever her real name was, had a pattern. She targeted professionals with access to significant funds, became romantically involved, then convinced them to steal money and flee to countries with limited extradition. The first man was a bank manager from Chicago. The second was an accountant from Boston. The Boston guy was found dead in his hotel room. In Cancun, Claudette explained. Apparent suicide. But there were inconsistencies in the investigation. By the time local police started asking questions, Sheila had disappeared, along with all the money. And the Chicago banker? He surfaced in the Philippines a year later. Broke and broken, claimed she drugged him, emptied their shared account, and vanished. By then, she'd already changed identities. I felt sick. So her plan isn't to build a life with Tony. It's to take the money and disappear. Based on her pattern, yes. The question is when. And whether Tony is a willing participant or a mark. I stared at the photos I'd taken of them by the pool. They looked happy, in love. But appearances could be deceiving. I knew that better than most. I need to warn him, I said, surprising myself. After everything he'd done, I still didn't want to see him dead in a hotel room. Be careful, Daya, Claudette warned. If he's in on it, warning him could put you in danger. If he's being manipulated, she might already have contingency plans in place. She was right. I needed more information before approaching either of them. That evening, I returned to the Royal Palms, this time dressed in an elegant black dress I'd packed for exactly this purpose. I made a dinner reservation at their signature restaurant, requesting a table with a view of the entire dining room. I arrived early, ordered a glass of wine, and waited. The maitre d' had given me an excellent vantage point, allowing me to see everyone who entered without being immediately visible myself. At 8:30, they arrived. Tony in a light linen suit I didn't recognize, Sheila in a red dress that clung to every curve. They were seated at a romantic table overlooking the water. I watched them through dinner, maintaining my distance. They ordered champagne, laughed, held hands across the table. Tony looked happier than I'd seen him in years. When they finished their meal, I paid my bill and discreetly followed them as they strolled along the resort's beachfront walkway. They stopped at a secluded spot, and he pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. I turned away, unexpected pain lancing through me. Whatever we'd had, whatever I thought we'd built together, it clearly hadn't been enough for him. Back in my hotel room, I tried to focus on the practical aspects of my situation. The emotional betrayal would have to wait. Right now, I needed to retrieve my money and ensure Tony didn't end up like Sheila's previous victims. I pulled out my laptop and the bank account information John had given me. There had to be a way to access those funds, or at least put a hold on them until legal proceedings could sort things out. That's when I remembered something Tony had once told me, years ago when we were first married and setting up our financial accounts. Always create passwords you can remember in an emergency, something meaningful that no one else would guess. For our joint accounts, we'd used variations of where we met, our anniversary, our first pet's name, personal details that connected us. What would Tony use for an account he never intended me to find? Something meaningful to him, something he wouldn't forget even under stress. I tried several combinations: his birthday, his mother's maiden name, the address of his childhood home. Nothing worked. Then I had an idea. If this account was set up for his new life with Sheila, maybe the password connected to her. I tried her birthday, which I'd found in my background research. No luck. The name of the law firm where they met? Still nothing. I sat back, frustrated. I was missing something. My phone buzzed with another text from Shauna. Check your email. Sent transaction records from T's credit card for past 6 months. Interesting pattern. I opened the email to find a detailed spreadsheet of Tony's credit card usage. Shauna had highlighted several charges: restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in our own city, jewelry purchases. The timeline of the affair laid out in financial transactions, but something else caught my eye. A recurring charge to a storage facility in our hometown. Every month for the past year, $150 to secure lock storage. We didn't have a storage unit, at least, not one I knew about. What was Tony hiding there? And more importantly, could it help me access the offshore account? I couldn't stop thinking about the storage unit. What was Tony keeping there that was worth $150 a month? It had to be significant, and potentially connected to the missing money. I called Shauna, despite the late hour in Grand Cayman. I need you to check out a storage facility for me, I explained, giving her the details from the credit card statement. Tony's been renting a unit there for a year. You think there's evidence inside? Maybe. At the very least, it's something he kept hidden from me, which makes it interesting. She agreed to visit the facility the next morning. What about your situation there? Any progress? I've located them, but I'm keeping my distance for now. I need more leverage before I make contact. After we hung up, I returned to my attempts to access the offshore account. If the password wasn't related to Sheila's personal information, what else might Tony have used? I stared at the account number, hoping for inspiration. The string of characters looked random, but banks often structured account numbers in specific ways. This one began with UCB T4587. UCB would be United Cayman Bank. T likely stood for Tony. But the numbers, 4587, why did that sequence seem familiar? Then it hit me. 4587. April 5th, 1987. Tony's birthday. Was the entire account number itself a clue? If so, what did the remaining characters represent? I tried various combinations using Tony's birthday as part of the password. Still nothing. I was missing something crucial. My phone rang. Shauna. That was fast, I answered. Don't tell me you broke into the storage unit in the middle of the night. No need to break in. The facility manager was very helpful when I showed my badge and mentioned a connection to an ongoing investigation. Shauna, you didn't... Relax. I didn't specifically claim jurisdiction or misrepresent anything. I just let him make assumptions about why a police officer was asking questions. And? The unit isn't registered to Tony. It's in the name of Edgar Blackwood. Tony's brother? I frowned. Edgar lived in Colorado. We saw him maybe once every few years. Why would Tony rent a storage unit in his brother's name? The manager let me take a look. It's mostly documents, Daya. Financial records, passport copies, some kind of legal agreements, and a laptop. My pulse quickened. A laptop? Can you get it to me? Already on it. I've collected everything that seemed relevant. I'll overnight the laptop to your hotel. The other documents are being scanned and sent to your email now. Shauna, you're breaking about a dozen protocols. Yeah, well, he broke your trust and stole your life savings. I think the scales of justice can handle a slight procedural irregularity. After we hung up, I checked my email. Shauna had sent dozens of scanned documents, financial statements, legal agreements, even copies of passports. I downloaded everything and started reviewing the files. Most were related to the offshore account setup, forms Tony had filled out, agreements he'd signed, documentation of transfers. Nothing immediately helpful for accessing the account. Then I found something odd, a document titled Authorization Protocol Recovery. It detailed specific steps for regaining access to the offshore account in case primary access was lost. According to this document, a secondary recovery password had been established that could be used to reset account access. The recovery prompt was, "Where it all began." Where it all began. That could mean anything. Where Tony and I began? Where he and Sheila began? Where his plan to steal our money began? I tried obvious answers. The name of the law firm, the city where we lived, the college Tony attended. Nothing worked. I was about to give up for the night when a new email arrived from Shauna. The subject line, "Look at this first." I opened it to find a single scanned page, a handwritten letter from Tony to his brother Edgar. "Edgar, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I'm hoping you never need this information, but I have to prepare for every possibility. I've set up an account that Daya doesn't know about. The details are in the blue folder. It's not what it seems. If anything happens to me, make sure she gets access. The recovery password is Carson's Diner, April 9, where it all began. She'll understand. I can't explain everything now, but I'm in over my head. S isn't who she claims to be. I discovered something I wasn't supposed to know, and now I'm playing along until I can figure out how to fix this. If I don't contact you by May 15, assume the worst. Tell Daya I'm sorry for everything. Tell her to look for the message in the account. Tony." I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking. Carson's Diner, April 9th. Our first date, 15 years ago. Where it all began. Tony had left a back door, into the account, not for Sheila, but for me. And he'd written this letter to his brother as a contingency plan. But why? If he was willingly involved with Sheila, why create an escape route that led back to me? And what did he mean about discovering something he wasn't supposed to know? I immediately tried the recovery password. Carson's Diner, April 9. The system accepted it, prompting me to create a new primary password. Within minutes, I had full access to the offshore account. The balance, $427,832.16, more than what had been in our joint savings. Where had the extra money come from? I examined the transaction history, multiple deposits from our joint account over 3 weeks, totaling the $400,000 I knew about. Then a single additional deposit of $27,132.16 from an account I didn't recognize. But the most surprising discovery was in the account notes section. There, in what appeared to be a field for internal memos, was a message. Daya, not safe. S. Elena Vasquez. Wanted in 3 countries. Proof in transactions. Firm clients targeted. Playing along until evidence secured. Don't trust anyone at firm. Love you. Always have. My heart pounded as the implications sank in. Tony hadn't betrayed me, at least not in the way I thought. He had discovered something about Sheila, or Elena, and was pretending to be her willing accomplice while gathering evidence. But why not tell me? Why let me believe he had abandoned me, stolen our money? The answer came in the next account note. Worry she's watching you. Too dangerous to contact directly. If reading this, I've secured evidence against her network. Check transaction dates. Against Marshall Chen Weintraub client accounts. Client accounts at the firm. Tony believed Sheila Elena was part of a larger network targeting wealthy clients. He was gathering evidence by appearing to cooperate. I quickly checked the remaining balance. All our money was still there. Tony hadn't stolen it. He'd moved it somewhere he thought was safe, somewhere with a back door only I could access. But that also meant Tony was in serious danger. If Sheila was indeed Elena Vasquez, and if Claudette's research about her previous partners was accurate, Tony's life was at risk. I needed to warn him, but how? If she was watching him, any direct contact could put him in immediate danger. I stared at the message in the account notes, rereading Tony's words. Love you. Always have. Had I been wrong about everything? Was my husband actually trying to protect me, our money, and potentially his firm's clients? More importantly, how could I help him now without getting him killed? My whole understanding of the situation had been turned upside down. I wasn't the victim of my husband's betrayal. I was the wife of a man who had placed himself in terrible danger while trying to protect me and others. I carefully examined every transaction in the offshore account, every note Tony had left. The more I looked, the clearer the picture became. Tony had discovered that Sheila, or Elena Vasquez, was part of a sophisticated operation targeting wealthy clients of his law firm. Rather than expose her immediately, he had pretended to be seduced by her, played along with her scheme, all while gathering evidence and securing our assets. But why not tell me? Why let me believe he had abandoned me? The answer was in his letter. To Edgar. S. isn't who she claims to be. Tony must have realized that Sheila was dangerous, potentially deadly, and feared that any unusual behavior on his part would raise her suspicions, including suddenly contacting his detective wife about his discoveries. I had to assume she was monitoring Tony closely, possibly even tracking his phone, emails, and movements. Any direct communication with me could put him at risk, so he had created this elaborate plan. Move our money to safety, leave breadcrumbs for me to follow, and continue playing the role of willing accomplice until he had enough evidence. But according to his letter to Edgar, if things went wrong, his brother was supposed to tell me about the account by May 15th. It was only April 23rd. Tony was still in the middle of whatever dangerous game he was playing with Sheila Chanelena. And now I was here in Grand Cayman, potentially disrupting his plan and putting him in even greater danger. I needed to think like the detective I was, not the hurt wife I had been. My first priority had to be ensuring Tony's safety. My second was gathering enough evidence to bring Sheila Elena to justice. I called Claudette, keeping my voice low despite being alone in my hotel room. Old habits from undercover operations. I need everything you can find on Elena Vasquez. Criminal records, known associates, patterns of operation. Who's Elena Vasquez? Sheila Moreno's real identity, apparently. Tony left me a message in the offshore account. He's not stealing our money. He's gathering evidence against her. She's wanted in 3 countries, according to him. Claudette was silent for a moment. That actually makes sense with what I've been finding. Let me dig deeper. But Daya, if she's as dangerous as it sounds, I know, Tony's in serious danger, and I might have made it worse by coming here. Do you think she knows you're there? I considered the question. I've been careful, but I have to assume it's possible. She's clearly sophisticated, and if she's been running this scheme for years, you need backup. Official backup. This is beyond 3 friends helping each other. She was right, but going official presented its own risks. If we bring in the authorities now, she might panic, eliminate Tony, and disappear. We need to be strategic. At least contact the local police in Grand Cayman. Give them a heads up about your presence and concerns. I'll consider it. For now, focus on Elena Vasquez. I need to understand what we're dealing with. After hanging up, I reviewed the storage unit documents again. Among them were printouts of emails between various clients of Tony's firm and their financial institutions, all forwarded to Tony's personal email. How had he gotten these? Had he been monitoring client accounts without authorization? Then I noticed something: small irregularities in transfer amounts. A client with $3.2 million in investments had a supposedly routine transfer of $32,480 to a tax preparation account. Another client had $18,850 moved for estate planning fees. These weren't huge sums compared to the client's total assets. They might not even notice the discrepancies, but they added up. If Sheila Elena had been doing this with multiple clients over months or years, the laptop Shauna had found might contain more evidence, but it wouldn't arrive until tomorrow at the earliest. I needed to do something now. I considered my options. Direct confrontation with Tony was too risky. If Sheila was watching him, it could sign his death warrant. Approaching Sheila herself was equally dangerous. Contacting local authorities without solid evidence might just alert her to my presence if she had connections here. There was one person who might help without raising suspicions: Marcus at United. Cayman Bank. I returned to the bank the next morning, asking specifically for Marcus. When he greeted me, I kept my demeanor professional, but added a hint of urgency. "I need to speak with you privately about a sensitive matter," I said quietly. His eyebrows raised slightly, but he led me to a small conference room. "Mrs. Blackwood, I explained yesterday that I cannot provide account access without—" "I already have access," I interrupted, pulling out my phone to show him the account login screen. "What I need now is your help with a potentially criminal matter." His expression shifted from polite dismissal to cautious interest. "Go on." "I believe your bank may be unwittingly involved in a multinational financial fraud operation. My husband discovered it and has been gathering evidence while pretending to cooperate." I showed him my detective credentials, then explained the situation as concisely as possible. Elena Vasquez's history, the targeting of wealthy clients, Tony's dangerous undercover operation. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked when I finished. "Because I need to communicate with my husband without alerting the woman he's with, and I think you can help." "How?" "By creating a banking issue that would require Tony's in-person attention, alone. Something routine enough not to raise suspicions, but significant enough that he would need to come to the bank." Marcus considered this. "What you're describing, the fraud, your husband's actions, this should be reported to the authorities. And it will be, once we have sufficient evidence and my husband is safe. But if we move too quickly, lives could be at risk." He was silent for a long moment, weighing his professional obligations against the scenario I'd presented. "There is a standard procedure for verifying international transfers over certain amounts," he finally said. "I could flag the most recent: deposit for additional verification, requiring the account holder to appear in person. Would that typically require only the primary account holder?" "Yes. There would be no reason for anyone else to attend." "Perfect. Can you schedule it for tomorrow morning?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll need to document this interaction in our security logs." "Of course. Just delay the entry until after tomorrow's meeting." As I left the bank, my phone buzzed with a message from Claudette. "Found her. Elena Vasquez, wanted for fraud in Spain, Argentina, and Panama. Suspected in 2 deaths. Sending full file to your email. Be careful." Back in my hotel room, I reviewed the file Claudette had sent. Elena Vasquez's criminal history was extensive and disturbing. She specialized in manipulating professionals with access to significant funds, convincing them to move money offshore, then disappearing with everything once the accounts were set up. In at least 2 cases, her partners were found dead after she vanished. What made this situation different was Tony. Unlike her previous victims, he had apparently discovered her scheme and was playing along while gathering evidence. But how had he figured it out? And how long could he maintain the deception before she realized something was wrong? The laptop from the storage unit arrived that afternoon. I powered it on, relieved to find it wasn't password protected. Tony had clearly intended for it to be found and accessed. The contents were meticulously organized, folders labeled by client name, each containing documentation of suspicious transactions. There were also records of Sheila's communications with unknown partners, forwarded emails, and financial projections showing expected yields from various targets. Tony had been building a case, documenting everything. But the most disturbing folder was labeled Network. Inside were profiles of at least a dozen individuals at various law firms, financial institutions, and wealth management companies across the country. Was this Elena's network? People working with her to identify and target wealthy victims? Among the names was John Williams, a partner at Tony's firm. The very man who had assigned Tony to the Harrington estate, the complex international holdings that had likely given Tony access to the information that exposed the scheme. If Williams was involved, the conspiracy was larger and more dangerous than I had imagined. It wasn't just Elena targeting victims. It was an organized operation with insiders strategically placed to identify wealthy clients and facilitate the theft of their assets. No wonder Tony hadn't gone to his firm with his discoveries. He couldn't be sure who to trust. As night fell, I prepared for the next day's meeting at the bank. I had no idea if Tony would appear alone as requested, or if Elena would insist on accompanying him. I had to be ready for either scenario. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package received. Significant evidence of criminal network. FBI contact interested. Awaiting your signal. C. Claudette had taken the evidence to her FBI contact. That was good. We needed official resources for something this big. But timing was crucial. Move too soon, and Tony could be in danger. Wait too long, and Elena might realize her operation was compromised. Everything hinged on tomorrow's meeting at the bank. I needed to warn Tony, to let him know he wasn't alone in this dangerous game. But I also needed to ensure Elena didn't suspect anything until we had enough evidence to arrest her and dismantle her network. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., wanting to arrive at the bank early to coordinate with Marcus and secure a vantage point. As I tried to sleep, my mind kept returning to Tony's message in the account. Love you, always have. Had I been wrong about our marriage too? Had I misinterpreted his distance, his changing behavior over the past months? Was it all part of his effort to protect me and others from a dangerous criminal? Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. I just hoped it wouldn't also bring tragedy. I arrived at United Cayman Bank at 7:30 a.m., well before the 9 a.m. appointment Marcus had arranged for Tony. The bank wouldn't open to the public until 8 a.m., but Marcus had agreed to meet me early to finalize our strategy. Mr. Blackwood is scheduled for 9 a.m., he confirmed as we sat in his office. The pretext is a verification issue with the recent large deposit. And you've arranged for the meeting to take place here? I asked, gesturing to his office with, It's private entrance from the back hallway. Yes, it's standard procedure for sensitive account matters. I nodded. I need to be present, but not immediately visible. I want to gauge his situation before revealing myself. Marcus indicated a small adjoining room used for document storage. You could wait in there. There's a one-way glass panel, originally installed so managers could observe client meetings for training purposes. It wasn't ideal, but it would serve our purpose. I could see and hear Tony without being seen, assess whether he was alone, and determine if it was safe to approach him. What about security? I asked. If Elena comes with him and things escalate, we have security personnel on staff, and I've alerted our head of security about a potential situation without specifics. They're ready to respond if needed. I checked my watch, 7:45 a.m. I need to get in position before the bank opens. If Elena is monitoring Tony's movements, she might send someone to scout the location in advance. Marcus nodded and led me to the storage room. It was small and cramped, filled with filing cabinets, but the one-way glass provided a clear view of his office. He gave me a small earpiece. So you can hear everything. I'll try to get as much information as possible about his situation. Thank you, Marcus. I know this is beyond your normal duties. He gave me a somber look. Financial crimes hurt real people, Detective Matthews. If what you've told me about this operation is true, I'm glad to help stop it. As he left, I settled into the cramped space, checking my phone one last time. A text from Claudette. FBI moving on Williams at the firm today. Assets frozen. Be ready for Elena to be alerted if she has communication channels with him. This complicated things. If the FBI was moving on John Williams, Elena's network might soon realize they were being investigated. She could panic, liquidate whatever assets she controlled, and disappear, possibly eliminating Tony as a liability before she fled. Our timeline had suddenly compressed from days to potentially hours. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened briefly, then said, "Send him up, please." My heart raced as I positioned myself for a clear view through the one-way glass. Would Tony be alone? Would I finally understand what had really been happening these past months? The door opened, and Tony entered. Alone. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but otherwise exactly as I remembered him. He wore the same linen suit I'd seen at the restaurant, but in the harsh office lighting, I could see the strain in his expression. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for coming," Marcus greeted him formally. "Please have a seat." Tony sat, his posture tense. "I understand there's an issue with my account?" "Yes. A verification matter regarding the recent large deposit. Standard procedure for transactions of that size." Tony nodded, though I could see a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "What do you need from me?" "First, I need to verify your identity." Marcus slid a form across the desk. "And then we need to discuss the source of the funds." As Tony pulled out his ID, he glanced around the office nervously. "How long will this take? I have plans this morning." "That depends on how quickly we can resolve the verification issue." Marcus looked at Tony's ID, then asked, "This recent deposit of $27,832.16, can you confirm the source?" Tony hesitated. "It's from a business associate for a joint investment opportunity." "I see. And the previous transfers from your U.S. account?" "Personal funds, retirement savings." Marcus made a note. "Mr. Blackwood, I should inform you that certain transaction patterns can trigger regulatory reviews. International transfers of this nature sometimes indicate—" "Is there a problem with my account?" Tony interrupted, his voice tight with stress. "Because if not, I really need to get back to my hotel. Actually, there is one other matter," Marcus said carefully. "We received a security alert about potential unauthorized access to your account yesterday." Tony's expression changed instantly from stress to alarm. "Unauthorized access? Was money taken?" "No, but someone used the recovery password to gain entry to the account interface." I could see the exact moment Tony realized what this meant. His eyes widened slightly, his posture shifting from tension to alert attention. "The recovery password," he repeated slowly. "And was there any unusual activity after this access was granted?" "Only a review of transaction history and account notes." Tony's shoulders relaxed slightly, almost imperceptibly unless you knew him well. "Which I did." "I see," he said, his voice now carefully controlled. "And do you know who accessed the account?" Marcus looked directly at Tony. "I believe you already know the answer to that question, Mr. Blackwood." There was a long moment of silence. Tony's eyes darted around the room as if looking for hidden observers. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. Is she here? Marcus nodded slightly toward the one-way glass. That was my cue. I pushed open the connecting door and stepped into the office. Hello, Tony. He stood immediately, his expression a complex mixture of relief, fear, and something else. Hope, perhaps. Daya. My name came out as a whisper. You found it, the message. I found everything, Tony. The offshore account, the storage unit, the laptop with all your evidence against Elena Vasquez and her network. His eyes widened. You have the laptop? It's safe? I nodded. And copied. Claudette has already shared the evidence with the FBI. They're moving on John Williams at the firm today. Williams, Tony hissed. He's been working with her for years, identifying targets, manipulating case assignments. He took a step toward me, then stopped, uncertainly hanging in the air between us. Daya, I know how this looks. I know what you must have thought when you saw the money was gone. But I had to. I know why you did it, I interrupted. You discovered Elena's operation and realized she was dangerous. You couldn't risk contacting me directly in case she was watching. So you played along while gathering evidence and securing our money. The relief on his face was immediate and profound. Yes, exactly. I discovered irregularities in the Harrington accounts 2 months ago. When I started investigating, I found a pattern that led back to Sheila, Elena, and Williams. Then I realized how deep it went, how many people were involved. I couldn't go to the firm, couldn't trust anyone there. So you pretended to fall for her scheme, I said. Became her willing accomplice while documenting everything. It was the only way to gather enough evidence to bring down the entire network. Not just Elena. But I never touched a penny of our money. It's all still there. I just needed it somewhere she couldn't access it if something went wrong. Marcus cleared his throat. I don't mean to interrupt this reunion, but we should discuss next steps. If Ms. Vasquez realizes Mr. Blackwood is here alone. Tony's expression darkened. She's dangerous, Daya. More than you know. When she thinks someone has betrayed her, she doesn't just run. She eliminates loose ends. That's why I couldn't tell you. I couldn't risk her suspecting anything and coming after you. We need to get you to safety, I said. The FBI is involved now. They can provide protection while they dismantle the network. Tony shook his head. It's not that simple. Elena has the hotel room bugged. She monitors my phone, my movements. She gave me exactly 30 minutes for this meeting. If I'm not back on time, or if I contact anyone she hasn't approved. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Then we need to move quickly, I said. Do you have any evidence on you? Anything that could help build the case against her? Only what's in my head. She's careful. No paper trail, no digital footprint she can't erase. That's why I had to document everything separately, keep the laptop hidden. I thought quickly. The FBI will need your testimony, but first we need to get you away from her safely. If she's as dangerous as your research suggests. My phone rang, interrupting us. Claudette. I need to take this, I said, stepping away slightly. Claudette? What's happening? Williams is in custody, but he's not talking. And there's a problem. We think Elena has been alerted. Her known associates are showing signs of going dark, accounts being emptied, phones going offline. My stomach dropped. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe. If she has a contingency plan, she's activating it now. I turned back to Tony and Marcus. We're out of time. Elena knows something's wrong. The network is going dark. The color drained from Tony's face. I need to get back. Now. If I'm not there when she realizes what's happening, you can't go back, I said firmly. It's too dangerous. I have to. My absence would confirm her suspicions immediately. If I'm there, I might be able to convince her I know nothing about the FBI action. Buy us some time. No, it's too risky. Tony gripped my shoulders, his eyes intense. Daya, listen to me. I've been playing this role for months. I can maintain it a little longer, just until the FBI can move on her directly. Marcus interjected. Perhaps we should contact local authorities. The Royal Cayman Police could— No, Tony said sharply. Elena has contacts in local law enforcement. That's how she's operated undiscovered for so long. We can't risk alerting them until the FBI has coordinated a proper operation. I knew he was right, but the thought of sending him back to Elena made my blood run cold. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not if we want to catch her and her entire network. He checked his watch. I have 10 minutes to get back to the hotel. If I'm late, she'll know something's wrong. I made a quick decision. Take my phone. It's a secure department line, untraceable. Keep it hidden. If things escalate, if you feel threatened in any way, call me. She searches me when I return from meetings alone. She'll find it. Then we need something she won't search. I thought for a moment, then reached for my necklace, a small silver pendant Tony had given me years ago. I pressed a hidden catch, revealing a tiny compartment. It's not much, but it's something. If you need help, press this 3 times quickly. It will send an emergency signal to my backup phone. It wasn't standard police equipment. It was something we'd bought years ago during a phase when we both enjoyed spy movies and gadgets. A novelty item that might now save his life. Tony took the pendant, his fingers brushing mine. I've missed you, he said quietly. Every day, every moment of this deception. Knowing you thought I'd betrayed you, it was the hardest part. Go, I said, my throat tight with emotion. Be careful. The FBI will move as quickly as they can. Nodded, slipping the pendant into his pocket. At the door, he paused. Daya, in case something goes wrong, I need you to know I never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment. And then he was gone, hurrying back to a deadly woman who believed he was her willing accomplice. I stood frozen, torn between letting him go and running after him. Marcus spoke softly behind me. What now, detective? I turned, forcing myself to think like a professional, not a terrified wife. Now we prepare for everything to go wrong. I spent the next hour in a private office at the bank, coordinating with Claudette and her FBI contact. The Bureau was scrambling to put together an international operation, seeking cooperation from Cayman authorities without alerting Elena's suspected contacts within local law enforcement. It's a diplomatic nightmare, Claudette explained. They need proper clearances, jurisdiction agreements. It could take hours, maybe longer. Hours Tony might not have. Williams isn't talking, she continued. But they found evidence on his computer, linking him to at least 20 cases of client fund misappropriation. The total could be in the millions. And Elena? Any movement on her end? Nothing concrete yet. Her known associates are going dark, but we have no visual confirmation of her activities in Grand Cayman. I checked the tracking app connected to the pendant I'd given Tony. The signal showed him at the Royal Palms Resort, presumably back in the room with Elena. He'd made it back in time, but now what? I'm going to the hotel, I decided. I need to be close if something happens. Daya, that's too risky. If she spots you, I'll be careful. But I'm not sitting in this office while Tony's life is in danger. I ended the call and turned to Marcus, who had been quietly supportive throughout the morning. Thank you for everything. If Tony returns to the bank for any reason, I'll contact you immediately, he promised. Outside, I hailed a taxi to take me to a cafe across from the Royal Palms. From there, I could monitor the hotel entrance while remaining relatively inconspicuous. I ordered a coffee and settled at an outdoor table with a clear view. My backup phone showed Tony's signal still at the resort. No emergency beacon had been activated. That was something, at least. Minutes stretched into an hour. I ordered another coffee, ignoring the curious glances from the waitstaff at my prolonged presence. My mind raced through scenarios, contingency plans, worst-case possibilities. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Checking out of hotel. Elena says business contact arriving with private boat, moving to marina. Help. Tony. Had found a way to text me. My pulse raced. A private boat meant Elena was planning to leave the island. If she got Tony on a boat, away from witnesses, away from help. I immediately texted Claudette. Elena moving Tony to marina. Possible. Escape plan with private boat. Need FBI to coordinate with Coast Guard now. Then I called for the check and hurried to my rental car. The Grand Cayman Marina was about 15 minutes away. If I hurried, I might get there before they boarded. As I drove, my phone rang. Claudette. FBI is contacting Cayman authorities and Coast Guard, she said without preamble. But they're still working through jurisdiction issues. It could be 30 minutes before they can mobilize. Tony doesn't have 30 minutes, I said, my voice tight. If she gets him on that boat... Daya, listen to me. Do not approach them directly. Elena, Vasquez has killed before. She won't hesitate to eliminate both Tony and you if she feels cornered. I knew Claudette was right, but the thought of standing by while Tony was taken away was unbearable. I have to do something. Observe only. Get a description of the boat, any identifying information, which direction they head. That's what the authorities will need for an intercept. I agreed, but even as I said the words, I knew I wouldn't stand by if Tony was in imminent danger. The marina came into view. A sprawling complex of docks filled with everything from modest fishing boats to luxury yachts. I parked at the public entrance and hurried toward the main walkway, scanning the crowd for Tony and Elena. I spotted them. At the far end of the marina, walking toward a sleek white yacht where a man in casual business attire waited. Elena had her arm linked through Tony's, a seemingly affectionate gesture that I now recognized as control, not intimacy. Tony's posture was stiff, his movements mechanical. I kept my distance, moving behind groups of tourists and boaters, using my phone to take photos of the yacht. It was large, maybe 90 feet, with the name Cassandra on the stern. I texted the information to Claudette along with photos, then edged closer, trying to hear their conversation. I was still too far away to make out words, but Elena's body. Language was animated, excited. Tony's remained rigid, cautious. The man waiting at the yacht greeted Elena with kisses on both cheeks. Clearly they knew each other well. He gave Tony a more reserved handshake, then gestured for them to board. This was it. If Tony got on that boat, he might never come back. I scanned the marina desperately for any sign of authorities, any potential allies. Nothing. Just tourists, boat owners, and marina staff, none of whom understood that they were witnessing a potential kidnapping, or worse. My phone buzzed with a message from Claudette. Coast Guard mobilizing, ETA 25 minutes, stall if possible, 25 minutes. Too long. I watched as Elena guided Tony up the gangway to the yacht. The businessman followed, speaking into a radio, likely instructing the captain to prepare for departure. I had seconds to make a decision. Let Tony go and hope the Coast Guard could intercept the yacht before anything happened to him, or intervene now and risk escalating an already dangerous situation. In that moment, Tony glanced back toward the marina. A quick, furtive look. His eyes scanned the crowd, and for a brief moment, they locked with mine. He gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. A warning. Stay back. Then he reached up and adjusted his collar, his fingers briefly touching the pendant I'd given him. 3 quick taps, the emergency signal activated on my phone. He was telling me he was in immediate danger. I had no choice. I moved quickly toward the yacht, mentally reviewing my options. I had no weapon, no authority here, nothing but my training and determination. I needed a distraction, something to delay their departure without immediately revealing my presence. Near the marina office was a row of emergency equipment, including fire alarms and extinguishers. I hesitated for only a second before pulling the fire alarm. The shrill sound cut through the peaceful marina atmosphere immediately. People stopped, looked around in confusion. Marina staff emerged from the office, radioing each other about the alarm. On the yacht, Elena, Tony, and the businessman all turned toward the sound. The distraction was working, but for how long? I used the confusion to move closer to the yacht, blending with the crowd that was now milling about uncertainly. I needed to get within earshot to understand what was happening before I made my next move. As I approached, I could finally hear their conversation. "It's probably nothing," the businessman was saying. "Just a tourist pulling the alarm by mistake." "We should leave now," Elena insisted, her accent more pronounced than when I'd observed her at the resort. "The transfer is ready. Roberto has the accounts prepared." "The harbor master won't let us leave during a fire alarm," the man replied. "Protocol. We have to wait for the all clear." Elena turned to Tony, her expression hardening. "Did you do this?" Tony looked genuinely confused. "Do what? Pull a fire alarm from on board a yacht?" She studied his face, then seemed to accept his answer. "We can't wait long. If Williams has been compromised—" "Williams is fine," Tony assured. Her, though I knew he was lying. "I spoke with him this morning before my bank meeting. Everything is proceeding as planned." Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. "You seem tense, Tony." "I'm just eager to get moving. The sooner we're away from here, the better." She smiled, a predatory expression that made my skin crawl. "Of course. Once we reach international waters, Roberto can complete the transfers. Then we'll all have what we want." What did that mean? Was she planning to give Tony his share of the stolen money? Or was this the point where her previous partners had met with accidents? Marina staff were moving through the docks now, checking for actual fires and trying to determine who had pulled the alarm. I knew it wouldn't be long before they reset the system and gave the all clear. I needed another delay tactic. Just then, my phone buzzed with a call from Claudette. "Coast Guard launching now," she said. "ETA 15 minutes. Local police finally cooperating too. They'll be at the marina in 10. "They're about to leave," I whispered urgently. "I pulled the fire alarm to buy time, but it won't hold them. For long. Daya, whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. Wait for backup." But as I watched, I saw the businessman check his phone, his expression changing to alarm. He showed something to Elena, whose face hardened instantly. "We have to go. Now!" She gripped Tony's arm with vicious intensity. "Forget the harbor master. Get us out of here." The businessman nodded and spoke rapidly into his radio. Within seconds, crew members appeared on deck, preparing for immediate departure. They had been warned. Somehow, Elena's network had alerted them that authorities were closing in. I couldn't wait any longer. Tony's life was measured in minutes now, not hours. If that yacht left the marina, he was as good as dead. I made my decision and stepped out of the crowd. I moved with purpose toward the yacht, no longer concerned with stealth. My detective training had taught me that sometimes the boldest approach was the most effective. The unexpected often created crucial moments of confusion. "Tony!" I called out, waving as if greeting an old friend. "Tony Blackwood!" All three figures on the deck turned toward me. Elena's face registered shock, then fury. The businessman looked confused, and Tony's expression was a complex mixture of terror and relief. "Your wife has been trying to reach you," I continued, maintaining my casual demeanor as I approached the gangway. "Something about an urgent family matter." Elena's hand tightened on Tony's arm. "Who is this?" she demanded, though I could see in her eyes that she already knew. Tony recovered quickly, professional instincts taking over. "A colleague from the firm," he said smoothly. "Daya Matthews. She handles some of our criminal defense cases." I flashed a bright smile, extending my hand toward Elena as I stepped onto the gangway. You must be Sheila. Tony's mentioned you. I'm in Grand Cayman for a conference and spotted Tony by chance. What a small world. Elena didn't take my offered hand. Her eyes had turned calculating, assessing the threat I posed. We're about to depart, she said coldly. I'm afraid Tony doesn't have time to chat. It will only take a minute, I insisted, continuing up the gangway. Family emergency and all that. The businessman stepped forward, blocking my path. This is a private vessel, Ms. Matthews. You're not authorized to board. I met his gaze steadily. And you are? John Reynolds, he replied, the lie evident in his slight hesitation. The owner of this yacht. Interesting, I said, pulling out my phone. Because according to maritime registration records, the Cassandra is owned by a shell. Company registered in Panama, which traces back to a holding company in the British Virgin Islands. I was bluffing, but the flash of uncertainty in his eyes told me I'd hit close to the mark. Elena stepped forward, her demeanor shifting from cautious to threatening. I don't know who you really are or what you want, but you need to leave. Now. Actually, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out my detective badge. I'm Detective Dea Matthews, Westlake Police Department, and I have some questions about an offshore account containing stolen funds. Tony's eyes widened in alarm. This wasn't the approach we had planned. But I needed to create confusion, to disrupt their dynamics long enough for backup to arrive. Elena's expression hardened. You have no jurisdiction here, Detective. True, I acknowledged. But the FBI does have jurisdiction over international financial crimes involving U.S. citizens and institutions. They're very interested in you, Elena Vasquez. That name, her real name, hit like a physical blow. Elena flinched, then recovered, her hand moving subtly toward her handbag. Tony, I said calmly. Step away from her. Elena laughed, a cold sound with no humor. He won't. Tell her, Tony. Tell your wife who... You really are. What you've really been doing. Tony's face was pale, but his voice remained steady. Daya already knows everything, Elena. About Williams, about the client accounts, about your entire operation. It's over. For a moment, Elena looked genuinely surprised. Then her expression transformed into something truly frightening, rage, mixed with a cold calculation. You've been playing me, she said softly. For how long? Since the Morgan account, Tony admitted. The numbers didn't add up. I traced the discrepancies and found a pattern going back years. You, Williams, Roberto here. He nodded toward the businessman, all working together to identify wealthy clients and siphon off their funds. Roberto moved suddenly, reaching inside his jacket. I tensed, preparing for a weapon, but instead, he pulled out a phone. We need to go now. I'm calling the captain. No one is going anywhere, I said firmly. The authorities are on their way. Coast Guard, local police, there's no escape by sea. Elena's hand was definitely in her handbag now. I kept my eyes on her, acutely aware that she was likely armed, and increasingly desperate. You should have stayed out of this, Detective, she said, her voice eerily calm. You had no idea what you were walking into. Actually, I knew exactly what I was walking into, I countered. Tony left a message for me in the offshore account, along with extensive documentation of your entire operation. Even if you somehow got away today, the evidence is already with the FBI. Tony took advantage of Elena's momentary shock to step away from her, moving closer to me. It's true, Elena. Everything's been documented. The client accounts, the transfer, patterns, your previous identities, Sheila Moreno, Ana Diaz, Carmen Fuentes, all the same person, all with the same pattern of stealing and disappearing, sometimes leaving dead partners behind. Elena pulled her hand from her handbag, now holding a small pistol. Back up, she ordered, pointing it at both of us. Both of you, against the railing. We complied slowly. I kept my voice calm, remembering my hostage negotiation training. Think about what you're doing, Elena. The marina is full of witnesses. That alarm brought everyone's attention this way. You shoot, you'll never make it off this island. Shut up, she snapped, turning to Roberto. Get the engine started, now. As Roberto moved toward the yacht's control panel, I heard sirens in the distance, police approaching the marina. Elena heard them too, her expression flickering with uncertainty. You can still walk away from this, I said carefully. Surrender now. Cooperate with the authorities. Help them dismantle the rest of the network. It will go better for you. She laughed bitterly. You think I don't know how this works? I'm not going to prison. The yacht's engines rumbled to life. Roberto called out, 2 minutes and we're clear. Elena kept the gun trained on us as she backed toward the control area. You two are coming with us. Insurance until we're safely away. I glanced at Tony, a silent communication passing between us. We both knew what would happen if we got on that boat. We'd be killed and dumped overboard once they reached international waters. The sirens were closer now, nearly at the marina entrance. We just needed to stall a little longer. The helicopter, Tony said suddenly. Elena frowned. What? The backup. Plan, Tony continued, his voice urgent. The helicopter on standby at the private airfield. It's faster, less conspicuous than a yacht. They'll be looking for boats, not aircraft. I felt a momentary flash of panic. Was Tony actually helping her escape? Then I caught his subtle glance toward the marina entrance. He was buying time, creating confusion. Elena hesitated, clearly weighing her options. Roberto? The helicopter? Roberto looked uncertain. It's fueled and ready, but no buts. Change of plans. She gestured with the gun. We're leaving. All of us. Now. As she turned slightly to address Roberto, Tony moved. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but I recognized it from years of watching him play basketball. A subtle shift of weight before a quick pivot. In one fluid motion, he lunged forward, grabbing Elena's wrist and forcing the gun upward. I moved simultaneously, driving my shoulder into her midsection. The gun discharged, the bullet harmlessly hitting the air. The three of us crashed to the deck in a tangle of limbs. Roberto rushed forward to help Elena, but I managed to free myself from the struggle and intercepted him with a sweeping kick that took his legs out from under him. He fell hard, his head striking the deck with a sickening thud. He lay still. I turned back to find Tony and Elena still struggling for control of the gun. Elena was surprisingly strong, her desperation giving her added force. The gun wavered, dangerously between them. I dove back into the fray, grabbing Elena's gun hand with both of mine, forcing her fingers against the trigger guard. She screamed in pain and rage, still fighting wildly. Police! Freeze! The shout came from the gangway, where 2 Cayman police officers stood with weapons drawn. Behind them, more officers were spreading across the dock, securing the area. Elena went still, recognizing the futility of continued resistance. The gun clattered to the deck as the officers rushed aboard to secure Elena and check on the unconscious. Roberto, Tony, and I sat back, breathing heavily. For a long moment, we just looked at each other, the reality of what had just happened, what had almost happened, sinking in. Then, without warning, Tony pulled me into a fierce embrace. I thought, I'd lost you, he whispered. When I saw you walking toward the yacht, I thought she was going to kill you right there. I held him tightly, feeling his heart racing against mine. I couldn't let her take you. Not after I finally understood what you'd been doing, what you'd risked to protect me and those clients. The police separated us gently, needing to take our statements. Over the next hour, the marina became a flurry of activity as FBI agents arrived, coordinating with local authorities. Elena and Roberto were taken into custody, their rights read to them by agents with jurisdiction over international financial crimes. A medical team examined Tony and me, treating our minor injuries, bruises, scrapes, the lingering effects of adrenaline. Through it all, we stayed close, reluctant to be separated again. As the sun began to set over the marina, an FBI agent named Harrington approached us with news. "We've secured Ms. Vasquez's hotel room and found extensive evidence of her operation," he reported. "Multiple phones, false identification documents, account information for dozens of potential targets. Combined with the evidence you've already provided, Mr. Blackwood, we have more than enough to put her away for a very long time." "And the rest of the network?" Tony asked. "Williams? The others?" "Williams is cooperating now, providing names and details. We're coordinating with agencies in multiple countries to round up the remaining members of the organization. Your documentation was instrumental in mapping the entire structure." I felt a surge of pride for what Tony had accomplished, the risks he had taken, the careful evidence he had gathered, all while maintaining a deception that must have been agonizing. "What about our money?" I asked, the practical question finally surfacing now that the immediate danger had passed. "The offshore account will be frozen temporarily as evidence," Agent Harrington explained. "But since you can clearly demonstrate it contains legitimately obtained personal funds, it should be released back to you within a few weeks. In the meantime, we can authorize emergency access if needed." Tony shook his head. "We're not hurting for immediate funds. I just want to make sure it's secure." "It is," Harrington assured us. "And I want to acknowledge what you both did here. Mr. Blackwood, your work documenting this operation was exceptional. And Detective Matthews, your actions today likely saved lives. Not just your husband's, but potentially future victims of this organization." As the agent left us to continue coordinating the operation, Tony and I found ourselves alone for the first time since the confrontation on the yacht. We sat on a bench overlooking the now quiet marina, the lights of police vehicles still flashing in the distance. "I'm sorry," Tony said quietly, "for putting you through this, for making you believe I'd betrayed you." "You did what you had to do," I replied. "You protected me, protected those clients, gathered evidence that will bring down an entire criminal organization. But the pain I caused you—" He looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. "I saw your face at the bank this morning. I know what you must have felt when you discovered the money was gone, when you thought I'd left you for another woman." I took his hand in mine. "Yes, it hurt, more than I can express. But now I understand why you did it, and knowing you were willing to risk everything, including my trust, to do the right thing. That means something, Tony. It means everything." He squeezed my hand. "I meant what I said in that message. I never stopped loving you. Not for a moment." As we sat there, watching the moon rise over the Caribbean, I realized something profound had shifted between us. The betrayal I had feared hadn't been real, but the courage Tony had shown, the moral compass that had guided him through months of dangerous deception, that was real. More real than I had ever known. "Let's go home," I said softly. Tony nodded, a genuine smile breaking through his exhaustion. Home sounds perfect. 3 months after the events in Grand Cayman, our life had found a new normal, different from before, but stronger in many ways. The FBI operation against Elena Vasquez's network had been a resounding success. 17 people across 5 countries were arrested, charged with various financial crimes ranging from wire fraud to money laundering. John Williams had turned state's evidence, providing detailed information about the organization's structure and operations in exchange for a reduced sentence. Elena herself faced multiple felony charges in the United States, along with outstanding warrants in 3 other countries. The evidence Tony had gathered, combined with Williams's testimony, had created an airtight case. She would likely spend decades in prison. Our money had been released from the offshore account after 6 weeks, just as Agent Harrington had promised. We transferred it back to a domestic account, a joint account that we now monitored together. Tony had insisted on complete financial transparency moving forward, a change I welcomed. His law firm had undergone significant restructuring in the wake of the scandal. Several partners had been implicated in the scheme, leaving the remaining leadership scrambling to salvage the firm's reputation. Tony had been offered a senior position in the reorganized structure, a recognition of his integrity in uncovering the fraud, but he had declined. "I need a fresh start," he told me. "Somewhere I can practice law without the shadow of what happened." I understood completely. My own return to the police department had been complicated. On one hand, I was praised for my role in uncovering an international financial crime network. On the other, I had clearly bent rules and protocols in my pursuit of justice. Lieutenant Reeves had been supportive but clear. "You did what you had to do in an extraordinary situation," he said during my review. "But let's not make a habit of unauthorized international investigations, shall we?" It was a fair assessment. I had acted as a wife first, detective second. I couldn't regret the outcome, but I recognized the professional lines I had crossed. Today, Tony and I were meeting with a realtor to look at office space downtown. After weeks of discussion, we had made a decision that felt right for both of us. Tony would open his own practice, focusing on helping victims of financial fraud navigate the complex legal aftermath of such crimes. His first-hand experience with Alina's network had given him unique insight into how these operations worked and how to help people recover. "What do you think?" Tony asked, gesturing around the bright corner office with large windows overlooking the city park. "I like it," I said honestly. "It feels hopeful." The realtor smiled. "I'll give you two a moment to discuss," she said, stepping out into the hallway. Tony came to stand beside me at the window. "Are you sure about this? It's a big investment." I nodded. "I'm sure. You'll be helping people who really need it. After what we went through, I can't think of anything more meaningful." He took my hand, a gesture that had become more frequent since our return from Grand Cayman. The experience had changed us both, making us more demonstrative, more vocal about our feelings. Near-death experiences had a way of clarifying priorities. "What about you?" he asked. "Any more thoughts about Lieutenant Reeves's offer?" The department had approached me about heading a new financial crimes task force, collaborating directly with the FBI and other agencies. It was a promotion, a recognition of the skills I'd demonstrated during the Vasquez case. "I'm leaning toward yes," I admitted. "It feels like the right direction, using what we went through to help others, just like you'll be doing with your practice." Tony smiled. "We make a good team. Always have." "Even when we're on opposite sides of the world, apparently," I teased, though the memory of those painful days still carried an edge. His expression grew serious. "I never want to be on the opposite side from you again, Daya. Not even to protect you. These past months have taught me that we're stronger together than apart, even in the most dangerous situations." I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "I've been thinking a lot about trust lately. How I trusted you completely for 15 years, then believed the worst when the evidence seemed overwhelming. Anyone would have believed what you did, given the circumstances." Tony said gently. "Maybe. But I'm a detective. I'm supposed to look deeper, to question surface appearances." I turned to face him fully. "I keep coming back to the message you left in that account. Love you. Always have. Even in the midst of this elaborate deception, facing incredible danger, you made sure to leave me that truth." Tony's eyes softened. It was the most important part of the message. All the details. About Elena's network, the client accounts, the evidence. That was necessary information. But love you. Always have. That was the essential truth I needed you to know, in case you didn't make it," I finished when he couldn't. He nodded. "I couldn't bear the thought of dying with you believing I had betrayed you. That I had stopped loving you." I thought about the offshore account that had initially seemed like the ultimate betrayal, but had actually been Tony's way of protecting our future. The account itself was a message, wasn't it? Not just the notes you left there, but the fact that you secured our money where only I could find it if something happened to you. Yes. I knew if I disappeared, you'd eventually trace the money. You're too good a detective not to. And when you found it, you'd discover the truth. I just wish you could have trusted me from the beginning, I said quietly. Tony sighed. I wanted to. Every day, every moment. But Elena was watching constantly. The one time I tried to leave you a clue, that night I mentioned the Harrington case at dinner, trying to draw your attention to irregularities there. She showed up at our house unannounced an hour later. Said she was in the neighborhood. I realized then she was monitoring everything, maybe even had our home bugged. Remembered that evening vaguely. Tony had been unusually talkative about a case, which was rare given client confidentiality. At the time, I'd been distracted by my own case and hadn't fully engaged with the conversation. A missed opportunity that might have changed everything. We can't change the past, I said, pushing away the regret. But we can learn from it. What? Have you learned? He asked, genuinely curious. I thought for a moment. That appearances can be deceiving, something I knew intellectually as a detective but had to learn emotionally as a wife. That sometimes the greatest act of love looks like betrayal on the surface. And that communication is essential, even when it seems impossible. Tony nodded. I've learned that too. Along with the knowledge that secrets, even well-intentioned, ones can cause immense pain. I never want to keep anything from you again, Daya. Not to protect you, not for any reason. Even if I tell you that your mother called this morning and invited herself to stay with us for 2 weeks? I asked with a hint of mischief. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Even then, no more secrets big or small. The realtor knocked. Gently before re-entering the office. Have you decided? Tony looked at me and I nodded. We'll take it, he said. As we finished the paperwork and headed back to our car, a sense of rightness settled over me. The past few months had been a crucible, testing our marriage in ways I could never have imagined. We had emerged changed, but intact, with a deeper understanding of each other and of the power of trust. That evening, we sat on our back porch, watching the sunset with glasses of wine, a simple pleasure that now felt like a luxury after everything we'd experienced. I got the final report from the FBI today, Tony said. They've recovered almost 80% of the stolen client funds. The rest is still being traced through various offshore accounts, but they're confident they'll find most of it. That's good news, I replied. Those people deserve to get their money back. It made me think about our money, Tony continued. How close we came to losing everything we'd worked for. I took a sip of wine, considering his words. You know, when I first discovered the money was gone, it wasn't really about the dollars. It was what it represented. Our future, our plans, our dreams together. Losing that hurt far more than losing the actual funds. And now? Now I know that our future isn't in a bank account. It's in what we build together, what we choose to do with each day we have. I looked at him. This man I had almost lost, whom I had mistakenly believed had betrayed me in the most painful way possible. I would rather have you and no savings than all the money in the world without you. Tony reached for my hand. I felt the same way in Grand Cayman. When Elena was planning our escape on that yacht, all I could think about was finding a way to warn you, to make sure you knew the truth. The money meant nothing compared to that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky shifted from blue to pink to deep orange. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found the message? Tony asked eventually. If you hadn't come to Grand Cayman? The question sent a chill through me despite the warm evening. Sometimes, I imagine Elena would have followed her usual pattern, taken the money, eliminated you as a liability, Disappeared to create a new identity somewhere else. Tony nodded solemnly. I knew the risk when I started gathering evidence against her. But I couldn't stand by and watch her victimize more people, not when I had the ability to stop her. I squeezed his hand. That's one of the things I love most about you. Your moral compass has always pointed true north, even when the path is dangerous. As has yours, he replied. Not many people would have done what you did, following the evidence even when it was leading to a painful truth, then risking everything to save the person you thought had betrayed you. I'm a detective, I said simply. Finding the truth is what I do. And I'm a lawyer who actually believes in justice, Tony added with a small smile. Maybe we were always destined for this moment, using our skills together to stop something truly wrong. As darkness fell, we moved inside, closing the door on the deepening night. Our home felt different now, more precious, more secure. We had almost lost everything, but instead had found something stronger. The offshore account that had initially seemed like the ultimate betrayal had contained not just our financial security, but a message of love and truth that had saved both of us. In the end, what looked like our greatest weakness, our complete trust in each other, had proven to be our greatest strength. Life would never return to exactly what it had been before. We had both seen too much, experienced too much, changed too fundamentally. But the new life we were building felt richer, more authentic, grounded in a shared understanding that had been tested in the harshest possible way. No more secrets, I whispered as we prepared for bed that night. No more secrets. Tony agreed, pulling me close. Just truth, whatever it costs. That night, I slept better than I had in months, secure in the knowledge that sometimes what looks like betrayal on the surface conceals the deepest kind of love underneath. And that message, hidden in an offshore account that once represented my greatest pain, was now the foundation of our renewed life together. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.